You didn't write this, but it's about you. What is going on? Hold on.
I have to explain something for the record first. And
Mhm,
there's a guy here, M. Thomas Nance. That's the pen name for an individual in New York City who is basically a journalist. He's a source and a journalist. He writes
mhm.
things for me and with me.
Right.
He actually has great connections with the New York City Police Department, with New York City government, with the politics and everybody else. And
Mhm.
he has not unmasked himself because the sources that he talks to would dry up immediately if they knew who he was and I was
It's
talking.
not
And if
you.
you want, Mike, I will introduce you to him. He's already been
I'll-
introduced to Frank Parlato, and as you know, his identity must remain confidential for those reasons as a source. The fact is
Mhm,
that M. Thomas Nast covers the stories, about me and with me in order to show that there's no issue with
mhm,
respect to the journalistic integrity. And so,
mhm.
with that preamble, we go into that
I
story.
wanted I wanted to get this up regarding Thomas Nast, who is a pen name. This is my favorite journalist. Her name is Elizabeth Jane Cochran. She eventually married a guy named Seaman, so it became Elizabeth Cochran Seaman. When she wrote, when she was a journalist, she was known as Nellie Bly. Right? And she went into an insane asylum, spent 10 days there. She went around the world. She did a bunch of things. But it's not new to write under what's called a pen name. All right. So that doesn't make you any less of a journalist. She's as big a journalist as you can get. And most people know her as Nellie Bly. Most people don't know her actual name. So using a pen name doesn't
Most people
stop you
don't
from being
know
a
who
journalist.
Robert Blair is either, but most of
Mm-hmm,
them do know who George Orwell is, and that
mm-hmm,
was his
right,
pen name.
right.
So yeah, but
Mm-hmm,
Thomas Nast, yeah. So these stories that come out, with him on them are collaborations where I run them through him. I
mm-hmm,
tell him, look, this is what's going on, and he has a bullshit detector just like any journalist, and
mm-hmm.
so it's going to be a fair and balanced story. So that story is, it comes at the height of hypocrisy in the courts, where this guy's
Mm-hmm.
in front of the courts as a judge, and he says, "Oh,
We did this a little out of order, but let's get back to the net. You and him have got all kinds of stuff.
oh yeah,
So I think we talked about this. So this is the subpoena that he issued against you.
this guy issued a subpoena against me, a member of the press.
Right.
Mike, they've done it to you. They've done it to Julie Holborn. They've done it to a lot of us, where when
Mhm.
we get too close
In
and to the
Julie
truth.
Holburn's case, it was even worse because she was asked to testify in a criminal case. But yeah, they issued a subpoena to me to show up to testify at a custody hearing. It's a violation of our free press. There's
They want
actually
my
free press.
sources, Mike. They want
Right,
my sources. Listen, I went to jail. Okay, I
right.
represented Roger Stone. I represented other people. I was involved politically and as a lawyer with people related to Trump and others. I kept my
Mhm.
mouth shut and sat in federal prison for 4 years. These people think that I'm not going to. I'm going to give up my sources because some
Right.
schmuck ambulance chaser from Lake Worth, Florida, sends me a subpoena. Come on, buddy. You're dealing with a Viking with an Ivy League degree. Okay, get it straight.
Right. And I'm trying to remember the journalist's name, but she spent like 6 months in jail for contempt. They were trying to get her source on a rock related story, and that was pretty hardcore. They usually only do this if you are reporting on like intelligence matters. Like if someone from the CIA gave you classified material, they will try to get you to break your source, and most journalists will not break the source. Um, it shouldn't be a lot. Look, here's the problem. No judge, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. No judge has ordered you to do this. This is
No.
they one of the problems with the law, people will say, if you write a truthful story, you can't be sued. No, that's wrong. Because in order to be sued, someone just has to file something properly, and then you're sued. It may be a frivolous lawsuit. You'll probably be able to get rid of it, but you are being sued. And in this case, this guy, because he's a lawyer, can issue a subpoena. No
Mm-hmm.
judge has looked at it, and
Mm-hmm.
now you have a subpoena. It
Yep.
may be it
It's
it
legal
is
process. It's legal process that I have to respond to. Now, here's the
correct.
best
You
part
can't.
about this, Mike.
The
Mike,
problem is, here's the problem. You can't ignore it because it's a subpoena. Now you've got to deal with it. Everybody's going to say it's no big deal. In Julie's case, she got lucky. She made some calls, and the First Amendment Coalition found her lawyers for free. And once you have hardcore lawyers on defending you, you can take a deep breath. They're going to take care of it. But if she hadn't found them, who knows what would happen? In her case, they eventually quashed the subpoena. In my case, I just ignored it because it was ridiculous. But in your case, you have to go file things in federal court.
I filed a 500-page motion in federal court, and so I'm the outlier. I have the knowledge and the ability. I talked to the Reporters Council on the freedom of the press, and they were talking about doing representation. I said, guys, I can handle this. I just want somebody to bounce ideas off of if I want to talk about appellate issues. And maybe you guys come on as an amicus if this ends up at the 11th Circuit. But the issue I have here isn't so much the quash the subpoena. I think the subpoena is dead 6 ways to Sunday. The problem is that I'm asking for a protective order to protect myself and other members of the press from this type of lawfare in this particular case, to try to stifle the media in this case, and this judge a standing order for these people not to issue subpoenas on journalists, number one. And number two, I want sanctions. I asked for $100,000 minimum of sanctions to punish this guy who's already doxed the Supreme Court.
And I hope you get something.
And his lawyer, this glorified dog bite lawyer who goes around and knowingly subpoenas journalists in violation of 11th Circuit precedent that's clear as day, that you have to exhaust all the other sources to get the information before you go to knock on a journalist's door. And then you have to make a showing to show why it's so necessary to have this information. And like you said, this isn't a national security case. This is some schmuck ambulance chasing. That's all that this is. Come on.
Right. The larger issue is when you as a journalist cover court, family court, criminal court, civil court, these kinds of scumbag lawyers try to insert you, try to put the legal process on you as a way of getting you to stop covering it. And that is wrong. It violates the spirit of the First Amendment, and they do need to be punished.
Violates the letter of the First Amendment.
Allowed to do
no law means no law. No law, no process, no nothing. No law means no law. That's it. And these people are that's just it. And these lawyers have to have consequences. And the federal courts, and there's a point that I will make in this case that I don't think has been made too well by really anybody else, is that the subpoenas for journalists and everybody else comes under Rule 45 of the federal rules. That's different from Rule 26 of the federal rules, which talks about discovery. I think Congress intended that these third-party subpoenas to be dealt with summarily and quickly by the courts. When they don't have merit, throw them out. But part of that is you have Rule 11 sanctions, you have Rule 45 sanctions, you have other sanctions. I think the court is more than empowered to sanction the shit out of attorneys that come in and waste their time and at the same time have a harmful and chilling effect on the First Amendment and the free press. And Nick Chiappetta from Lake Worth, Florida, and Danesh Noshirvan, the SCOTUS Doxxer, should be held to account and sanctioned to the fullest possible extent the law allows, not just to punish them for their brazen activity, but to send a deterrent message that the courts protect the Fourth Estate, and in turn, the Fourth Estate protects the integrity and the constitutional integrity of our courts in this system.
I totally agree. And this should be, in the larger sense, a bigger story. How often journalists who are covering court cases get inserted in this way, and how it violates at least the spirit of the First Amendment, if not the letter. And it really does violate the letter. The idea that someone can ask to subpoena me to testify in a child custody case that I'm covering, the same way with you. And it's even, Julie's was absolutely the worst, because they were asking for her to testify in a criminal case she was covering because they didn't like what she was writing. And if she hadn't gotten the First Amendment coalition, who knows what would have happened? And of course, as soon as she got hotshot lawyers to write big, long, in-depth briefs on her behalf, they backed down because they didn't expect her to get that kind of a legal representation. They thought they'd bully her. They thought they'd bully you. They thought they'd bully me. And that's really what it is. It's a form of legal bullying, but it happens a lot, and it should be covered more because it violates the First Amendment.
Congress intended on the federal rules that if you have a good faith basis, that's fine. But when you bring something in bad faith, be it a subpoena, be it a claim, be it anything, and waste the court's time, the federal court's time, there should be consequences both for the attorney and for the litigant. And that is, in this case, is a textbook hornbook case why sanctions should issue by the federal court.
All right.